Raise your hand if you have never competed before. Is there anybody here? One. Raise your hand if you intend to compete this month, or I guess in the coming 3 weeks. Okay, in December. Cool. In January, is anybody competing at the San Jose Open? San Jose Open, most everybody here? Cool. Okay. Well, thank you all for coming. We put this together on short notice. I got wind of the San Jose Open date, and we put this together in less than a week. So appreciate you acting quickly and coming out here to learn a couple things, hopefully, or if not something new, something that may have reminded you of something you've learned before, that'll help you during your upcoming competitions. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Matt. I'm the owner of Victory Submission Strength. So welcome in. Thank you for coming. We specialize in helping grapplers get stronger, faster, more mobile, so they can do more of what they love, right? Some of that's, for some people that's competing, for some people it's just a hobby, for some people it's competing to get better at jiu-jitsu, and other people want to win world titles, right? And so, you know, we've got something here for everybody, and I think you'll find, well, I think you'll find that we got a lot of useful information for you. I'm a brown belt under Kaio, a certified strength and conditioning specialist, amongst many other things. I've got over 18 years of coaching experience. I started coaching when I was 16 years old, and actually started coaching in hockey. That was where my background started, whether that was private lessons or eventually adult clinics where I coached my own dad, which was fun. Team coaches, I coached for the Sharks for a long time, and then made the full transition into strength and conditioning with the advent of COVID, which turned all of our lives upside down. And this is the result of that giant shakeup. So it's hard not to be at least a little bit thankful. You may have heard me on several podcasts, such as Off the Mats, Elbows Tight, and probably most notably BJJ Fanatics. But most importantly, I'm just like you guys. I love to compete. I feel at home when I compete. I feel like I learn a lot about myself when I compete. I feel like I learn a lot about my jiu-jitsu, what I do know, what I don't know, right? And I find that competition is helpful in growing in those areas of my life. So, what to expect from today, right? We're gonna talk about cutting weight, we'll talk about how to prepare in the gym, we'll talk about how to prepare on the mats, and then what to do on the day of the competition. I'll give you some mental strategies that'll help hopefully make your transition into competition for your gala much easier. So I'm gonna start with a hot take, and I'm gonna tell you that I don't think you should cut weight. I think it is vastly overrated. I think the perceived benefits are far outweighed by the risks associated with cutting weight. The most common ways to cut weight, first is just calorie restriction, right? Just not eating as much as you normally would. There are several things that come along or that come with that type of strategy, right? The first would be obviously lack of fuel, right? Weight cycling, so when you cut weight and then gain it back, cut weight, then gain it back, has oftentimes long-lasting effects on your metabolism, which doesn't always bounce back, which is why I think you see a lot of professional athletes balloon after their careers, because they've spent so much time restricting that their metabolism slow down. Essentially what happens is your body thinks it's starving, the metabolism slows because it doesn't know when it's gonna get its next meal or if it's gonna get enough the next time through, and it doesn't always bounce back, right? So you may do irreversible damage to your metabolism in cutting weight over and over and over. Secondly, your relationship with food can often suffer. And I say that as somebody who has cut weight myself, right? And for those of you who have competed, you can all probably attest to cutting things out that you maybe enjoy having and then only craving those things for several weeks at a time, only to binge on them once the competition's over, which isn't exactly setting yourself up for, like I said, a healthy relationship with food, which we will do until we die, right? We're not always gonna compete, but we will always eat. And I think that's really important to note, that there are not just physiological things that can come along with that kind of strategy, but also psychological ones, okay? The second is dehydration, right? That can come in several forms, whether that's simply not drinking water, which a lot of people do on the day of the competition if they're gonna miss weight. That could come in the form of like hot tub or baths. That could come in the form of excess sweat response, so adding more exercise so that you sweat so that you lose the water weight, right? Again, several risks that come along with that. Number one would be an increased risk of musculoskeletal injuries. You've got to think water, we're 70% water. So when you start cutting that out, things don't get to the places they need to get because that's the way it goes there, right? Blood starts to thicken when you're dehydrated. Right? If your blood starts to thicken, it doesn't get to the places as quickly as it normally does, which means your muscles and your tissues don't get the nutrients that they might get, right, or that they need. You're at increased risk of concussion, right? That has to do with because you're dehydrated, water comes to your brain, right, because it needs to stay alive, and then your brain is heavier, and if you sustain a hit, whether that's on the ground or somebody's head collides with yours or whatever, your brain shakes in your head, and because it's heavier, it pulls at the tissue that holds it into place, which could result in it separating eventually, and then now your brain is kind of bouncing around in your skull, which is never fun. Acute kidney failure, we'll talk about that in a little bit, and even death, right? We need water. I would not advise cutting water out of your preparation when it comes to tournaments. Think about it. How far would your car go if you didn't put gas in it? Not very far, right? Everybody knows who this is? Dan Cormier. Dan Cormier, one of the best MMA fighters of all time. Everybody knows how good of a fighter he was. What a lot of people don't know is that he missed the Olympics in 2008 because of acute kidney failure. It'd be a really shitty thing to miss because you weren't hydrated or fueled, right? You probably don't know who this is. This is Yang Bing, Leonardo Souza, both MMA fighters who are no longer here as a result of their weight cut. It's a very real thing. The risks are real, and that's why I don't advise it. On the other hand, no one can argue with the benefits of strength training. There's no argument. It's scientifically proven. There are no ways that anybody could argue against it, right? So we're going to talk about a couple of things that have to do with strength training. The first of which is what's called the concurrent training model. So the concurrent training model just means that we train all qualities all the time so that nothing gets detrained. Right? It's really common in a lot of strength training programs to focus on only one thing at a time. Here we focus on it all at the same time so that nothing gets detrained, right? So mobility, power, and strength, probably the three biggest pillars. We're going to talk about how those play a role and how they support each other. And to explain that, or to illustrate that point, we're going to use what's called the highway analogy. So mobility. Mobility is your foundation, right? It is your ability to move your limbs through a full range of motion, under control, with strength, right? You cannot get your car from point A to point B if your mobility looks like this. Or when you think about these potholes as maybe previous injury, any kind of movement limitation, right? If I can't get my arm up overhead, I have to go somewhere else for that motion, whether that's in my spine. Oftentimes people arch at the back in order to get their arms up over their head if they don't have the requisite mobility in the shoulder. And I should preface this by saying compensation in and of itself is not a bad thing, right? If I trip and fall, that's a compensation. That doesn't hurt. But if over and over and over and over I'm compensating because I lack the mobility, that's when you get overuse injuries. And that's why training mobility is such an important piece of the puzzle, right? It's because overuse injuries just mean you're using something that wasn't intended for the thing that you're doing, right? With regards to jiu-jitsu, mobility is your ability to get in and out of positions at will. It's maybe your ability to retain guard, your ability to attempt or finish certain submissions. We all have at some point or another tried something but weren't able to get there, or we know somebody who has done something like that, right? Power. Power, I want you to think of like raising the speed limit on the highway, right? So our foundation's nice and smooth. We can move in all the ways that we need to move for our sport. Okay, power is what's going to enable us to get there quicker. Okay, how fast can we get the synapse from the brain to the limbs to move, right? As it pertains to jiu-jitsu, power is your scrambles, your wrestle-ups, takedowns, anything that requires quick movement, oftentimes submissions. We've all watched high-level jiu-jitsu, looks like nothing's happening, and then all of a sudden, bang, right? They throw the submission on. That's a powerful movement. And again, that's why it's important to train those things, right? And lastly, strength. So we think we've got our mobility, our foundation, and the speed limit is fast. Now what we want is volume. More strength, more lanes. More lanes, more cars can get through. More cars, more force, right? Okay, so when we're building strength, or how does that apply to jiu-jitsu, right? Well, strength is your ability to hold the position once you get it, right? It's your ability to maybe frame and hold somebody off as they attack. It's your ability to maintain your position when somebody's trying to sweep you, right? There are several, right? Nobody ever got hurt from being too strong, right? That just doesn't happen, okay? So that's why, again, strength plays such a huge role. And as an aside, if I had to point to one particular kind of strength that I think is most important, especially when it comes to jiu-jitsu, it is single leg strength. So most, or I would say many jiu-jitsu athletes, I think, submit to it's very common for powerlifting to kind of, I think it's really common for jiu-jitsu athletes to submit to that kind of powerlifting mentality. Squat, bench, deadlift. And that's not to say that we don't do those things. We do those things. But I think what's maybe more important is the single leg aspect. So single leg squats, split squats, single leg deadlifts, any variation or iteration of those things play a far bigger role in our programming than the bilateral versions. And I say that because if you think about it, we do everything one leg at a time. We walk one leg at a time, we run one leg at a time. When we pass the guard, we're almost never, if ever, on both feet, 50-50. You're constantly shifting your weight from one foot to the other. And so developing strength on one leg, if you're gonna do anything that I say today, go do single leg stuff because it'll change your life. It'll change the way you play, okay? When it comes to building a strength program, especially when it comes to competition, we often work from the date of the competition backwards. So I think another common misconception is that, well, okay, you just come up with a program and then wherever you're at, that's where you're at. But what we want to do is we want to find the date. So in this case, for the San Jose Open, which is in January, and say, okay, what qualities do we want to bias toward right before the competition, so that's the thing that we are most capable of exhibiting, right? So this is kind of what it looks like. This is kind of how we would do it. So if you think like San Jose Open is on the other end of this graph here in January, the thing that we want to be focused on right before the competition is like power, dynamic effort stuff, very fast stuff, okay? I say that because that's what you need during the competition. Nobody wants to be slow in competition, so that's the quality that we want to harp on, right? And then we just work backwards. We say, okay, well, what quality do we need? What quality will set us up to work on those things? Well, that's our concentric effort stuff. And what quality will set us up for that? That's our eccentric stuff. And before that, our isometric stuff. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with the terms, isometric, think plank, just squeeze. No movement, you just stay there. Eccentric is the lowering portion of anything. So That's our ability to absorb force. That's really important because tissue breaks down when the force exerted upon it exceeds its ability to absorb force. Right? So it's very, very important to spend some time in that area so that it's not the first time your body's felt it when somebody else lays it on you. Right? Concentric is your ability to create force, and then your power, dynamic stuff is basically force or strength stuff with a time component. How fast can you produce force? Right? Which brings us to how to prepare on the mats.
Hi guys. Those of you that don't know me, my name is Jessica Stroll. I'm a brown belt under Kaio. I'm one of the instructors over at Kaioterra Academy, and I am a full-time competitor. So just like strength training, you don't immediately want to jump into the hardest phase of your training, right? I know a lot of people get excited. They think, oh, like I'm going to train for this competition. I'm going to go all in, go hard, train 5 days a week, and immediately. That's great. We're going to get there eventually, but you don't necessarily want to start by jumping in there. That's generally how you get overtrained, burned out, and hurt. So the first thing, weeks 1 and 2, you're going to start ramping up. The most important thing is any competition that you are participating in, learn the rules, right? Now, the IBJJF is generally the standard rule set that most competitions go by, but if you look at BJJ Tour, Jiu-Jitsu World League, a lot of them have minor deviations in the rules, right? So what I would recommend is either downloading their manual or taking a rules course. I know the IBJJF has rules courses generally with most of the competitions that they have, okay? If you don't know the rules, you can have better jiu-jitsu than somebody and they can still beat you. So that is a very important component to competing, okay? So weeks 1, 2, we're gonna start to ramp it up. Weeks 3 and 4, whatever your current training volume is, now this is assuming that you have, let's say 2 days a week of lifting as well. Whatever your current training volume is, say you train 3 days a week, right? I want you to add another session on top of that, right? We're gradually building our body into having more sessions. You're gonna start to intensify your training a little bit, start to look for a little bit harder of partners, do some situationals based on rules. Now, all of this is dependent on what you have available to you as far as training partners go, right? Obviously, not every training partner is going to want to do competitive training with you. That's just not how it is. And please make sure if you're going to have a competitive round with somebody that they know about it first. Don't be that guy. But it is more than okay to say to somebody, hey, I have this competition that I'm preparing for. Do you think we could go a little harder? And I guarantee you most of your training partners will either A, be willing, or they'll say, hey, like I'm not the best one for that, or I'm injured, or whatever it is, okay? So weeks 5 and 6, these should be your hardest week of training. I would add another week or another session of training on top of this. I would max out at 5 days a week. I mean, I'm assuming most of you have jobs, right? And that takes a component, that takes a mental toll as well. You can only do so much on top of lifting twice a week, right? So this is when you're gonna start to add more competition rounds. And you can, if your coach is willing or able, say, hey, coach, I have this competition going up. I have this partner that's willing to work with me. Do you think you could referee a competition round for us, right? That is the most helpful thing that I would advise you to do is practice having somebody watch you, keeping track of your points, and having somebody coach you. Practice being coachable, because if you're not used to being coached, when you hear your coach on the side of the mat in the competition, you are not going to know how to respond generally most of the time, or it's going to be hard to focus, okay? Week 7, this is when we're going to start to take away some volume, right? These last 2 weeks, again, this 8-week timeline, we need to have our body start to repair, right? We want to have optimal performance, which means we need some recovery time. Now, I know the old mentality is generally train until you are dead up until 2 days before the competition. That is not practical, nor is it feasible, okay? So week 7, you're gonna start to decrease your volume. Take away a training session. Now, week 8, now is time to recover. I would say on a 7-day timeline, the first day, that 7th day, counting down to your competition, that will be your last day of hard training. From then on, it is light situational rounds, drilling. If your body is used to doing some sort of constant cardio or movement, maybe incorporate that into, that's more Matt's component than mine, but now is your time to really have some recovery going on. And I guarantee you, if you've ever competed before and you've adhered to that old mindset of train up until you're dead 2 days beforehand, you've gotten halfway through your first match and been like, oh my God, I'm so tired, right? You feel your legs start to burn, whatever it is. If you do this, that will not happen. You will still be tired, but you will have more to give to your matches, I promise. But anyways, that's my little spiel on how to taper your training. So
to build on what Jess was saying, she kind of made mention of it, and I should have told you when we talked about the strength stuff, but most of our athletes just train in the gym twice a week, train here twice a week. I think another old school thought is that, well, you need to be in the gym 5 days a week if you want to make any gains, and that just simply isn't true. Right? You're only as good as your recovery, and I think people are shocked actually at how far they come when they're only lifting twice a week, because they actually have time to recover. And that actually brings us into the last bit here, which is that last week. When it comes to strength training, right, Jess told you what to do on the mats. When it comes to strength training, if you've got 2 lifts, say you compete on Saturday, and say your first lift's on Monday, that first lift, I'm okay with you doing the full lift. But then anything past Tuesday, you got Wednesday or Thursday lift, you're coming in to do mobility, your dynamic warm-up, and then just the power stuff, power and speed, and that's it. And we typically don't do any strength stuff after that. Reason being, we want you to be fresh, right? The other thing is strength gains last a little bit longer than speed and power stuff do. So you can effectively maintain your strength as long as the stimulus is intense enough. If the intensity is high enough, you can maintain your strength with just 1 lift a month, which that's bare minimum maintenance, but you're not getting any better, right? Your power stuff starts to go away after about 3 or 4 days. So if you're not training power, and if your last, say you only trained on Monday, but then you're competing on Saturday, anything you did for power and speed has already started to diminish by the time you get there. So that's why we're okay with that second lift being more power and speed focused and then cutting it there, right? Because the strength stuff's not gonna go away overnight, but the power and speed stuff typically does, or it goes away quicker, right? Not necessarily overnight. So that takes us up to competition day, right? This can be overwhelming, especially if it's your first one, okay? I think what's most important, and I'll let Jess comment on this at the end too if she wants, but I think what's most important is that you develop a routine. Routine is so, so important because it's something that you can control, right? There's a lot of things going on here that we cannot control. What the other people are doing, what the other people are saying, the temperature, the noise, any number of things, right? All things that we cannot control, but you can control routine. And so what I highly, highly recommend is, number 1, getting there at least an hour early. That gives you enough time just in case they're running early. They're typically not, but sometimes it happens, right? Getting there at least an hour early, and then I find several things. First is my mat, where's that? Second is bullpen weigh-in, where's that? Third, bathroom. A lot of people don't think about that and then end up in the bullpen and then they have to go to the bathroom and they're like, oh my God, where the hell is it? And it causes panic. And then lastly is somewhere that I can go be by myself away from everything, right? I don't typically like to watch other matches before I'm gonna compete. Reason being, when I start to watch other people, I start to think about what I'm gonna do, and you'll find in a moment that the last thing I want to do is actually think about the match that I'm going to, which sounds counterintuitive. So why wouldn't you think about the match? It's because there are so many things that can happen, again, outside of your control, that if you start to catastrophize and think about all the different possibilities, you'll drive yourself absolutely crazy, right? I like to read. Some people like music, some people have other things. Personally, I take a book, I find my spot after I found all my checkpoints, and then I find my spot, and then I just go read. And I try to take my mind off of the thing that I'm about to do, because I will be there, I'll be ready. My brain knows what to do, I know how to do jujitsu. You know, I'm not worried about, you know, visualizing or anything like that, because again, I don't want to catastrophize. I don't want to start going down rabbit holes of things that might happen, but if you think about the possibilities in jiu-jitsu, they're endless, right? And you're not going to know what is happening in front of you until you get there. So I think wasting your energy thinking about it over and over and over, well, it is what I just said. It's a waste of energy. Which is where positive affirmations come in. Call me woo-woo or whatever, but I think the positive affirmations that I've developed have really, really helped with keeping my mind out of that fear phase, that catastrophe space, right? Where I'm just thinking about all the things that could happen. So anytime I start to feel my brain wander away from the book or the space that I'm in or how I'm feeling, I just think to myself, I'm calm, I'm under control, I trust the technique will flow, and I'm here to have fun. That's it. And I just keep repeating those to myself until I calm down, right? Because you'll feel it, and I'm sure you've all felt it, that flutter in your heart when you're like, oh shit, like this is about to happen. Oh, see you, Brendan. So in repeating those things, now, does that mean I don't care about winning? No, I want to win. I'm going to do everything that I can to win. But I think it's important to remember why you're there. Because if you don't remember why you're there and you're just doing it because somebody else wants you to do it, or you're feeling pressured, you're not in the right space, you're liable to get hurt, whether that's physically or psychologically, and it's just not a fun place to be. So I'm calm, I'm under control, I trust the technique will flow, right? Whatever I know, it's gonna come out as long as I let it, and I'm here to have fun, right? Which brings us to our next step, which is the warm-up. This is something that I think is sorely lacking in most competitors' repertoire, and that is a viable warm-up. We've all seen burpees dude, jumping jacks guy, really fast push-ups guy, shadow boxing guy. All of those people exist. We all may have done those things at some point or another. We all may have done those things at some point or another. I'll be the first to admit that I did some of those things too, because I didn't know what, and that's coming from, like, I played hockey my whole life and we had a dynamic warm-up, and I don't know why I never made not that I never made it, because now I do it, but why I didn't initially make the connection was like, why aren't I preparing the same way? Like, I've prepared for, you know, athletic competitions my whole life. And so when I started to think about that, I was like, duh. This is what people should be doing. So let's do this. We're gonna do the dynamic warm-up together. I'm gonna show you, we're gonna go through cars and then a short dynamic warm-up that you can do in place, because that's another thing that people seem to be unsure of. Typically in team sports, when you do a dynamic warm-up, you do it across a 10 or 20 yard span. You don't always have that when you're in the bullpen. So if I could have you all stand up, and then you can spread out, maybe give yourself just a couple of feet, but don't spread out so far that you're not anywhere close to somebody, because in the bullpen, it's going to be like that. You're gonna be near people, okay? You might give yourselves enough room to move your arms around just so you don't like hit anybody or any walls or anything. Okay, so the very first thing we're gonna do is what's called CARS. CARS stands for Controlled Articular Rotations. You don't need to remember that, and you'll all get this. If you registered for the seminar, it'll be either on your phone or in your email. I'll get you afterwards, don't worry, I'll send it to you. Okay, so everybody will get this. You don't need to remember what the acronym stands for. There are a few things that you do need to remember though as you do this. That is, First is we never move through closing angle pain. Closing angle pain just means if I tilt my head this way, this angle closes, this angle opens. If I feel pain on the closing angle side, stay away from that because it's typically the joint coming together. We don't want to move through it because it's going to feel worse the next day. So if you feel closing angle pain, just go around it. For example, if I'm doing this on my neck, right, say I start to feel pain here, I'm just going to cut a little piece of pizza out and then continue around. Okay? It's the simplest way to do it. Okay? If you're doing this on your own and you don't feel comfortable doing that, you can do what's called ping-ponging, and that just means like if I feel the pain here, I'm just going to go back the other way until I feel it again, and then I go back the other way. Okay, so that's another strategy to get around any closing angle pain. I don't anticipate anybody will have any tonight, but in the event that it happens, now you know. Second thing, in order for this to work, we can only move the joint that we're working on. So if I use my shoulder as an example, and I'm trying to go overhead, and I let my ego get the best of me, and I start to tilt my spine in order to get my arm up higher, that's my spine acting as my shoulder, which now I can't get an accurate read, is what my shoulder is capable of in this moment. Okay? So we can only move the joint that we're working on. Lastly, we have to move through the end range of motion for any of this to work. So if I just do this with my shoulder, nothing's happening here. Nothing's happening in the joint. Maybe the muscles, yeah, but nothing's happening deep in the tissue. Okay? So we have to move as far over, as far up, as far around, back, okay, as we can. Otherwise, the brain doesn't know to send the nutrients and fluid to the joint, okay? It's not being told the right message. Okay, I want you to think of these like brushing your teeth for your joints. Cars are not fun and sexy. You don't brush your teeth because it's fun and sexy. You brush your teeth because if you don't, your teeth rot, okay? Cars are important because they help lubricate the joints, prepare them for higher levels of work, and help you maintain or sometimes increase the range of motion that you have in any particular joint. Okay? So we're gonna go through the whole thing. We're gonna do neck all the way down to toes, and this is how I'd recommend you start all of your warm-ups. If not, do this every day, right? Remember, it's like brushing your teeth. So let's go feet about hip to shoulder width apart, hands by our side. We're gonna make fists. And then give me like a 20% squeeze. You don't have to go like full Super Saiyan, but you know, just enough that if you did move, Jordan got that reference, all right. If you move, you notice it. Obviously the idea is to not move. So from here, 20% squeeze. We're gonna tuck our chin toward our chest. Trace the collarbone to your right. So you're looking at the back wall. Chin should be over your shoulder, forehead to the ceiling. Look all the way up, as far back as you can. Rotate to the other side. You should be looking out the front window. Chin over your shoulder. Chin down to collarbone. Back to the middle. Anybody feel any pain? No? Cool. All right. We're going to do the same thing the other way. Okay, so chin down. Trace the collarbone to your left. Eyes should be out the front window. Lean back, forehead to the ceiling. Rotate to the other side, chin over the shoulder, down to the collarbone, back to the middle. Cool? That's the neck. Super simple. Okay? Next one is spine. Spine's a little funny because you can't see it. But I want you to imagine like you're in cement from the hips down. Okay? So nothing moves. Okay? You'll notice that my hips stay nice and square as I do this. You don't have to do this yet. I want to show you first, and then I'll cue you through it. Okay? So cement from the hips down, cross arms over the chest, and then we're going to do the same thing we did with the neck. Just round the back forward, rotate to one side, open, rotate to the other side, down, and then back to the middle. Again, noticing that my hips stay square and face forward. Okay? So imagine you're in cement from the hips down, squeeze your butt as tight as you can, cross your arms over your chest. We're going to round the back forward as far as you can. Try to make yourself like a roly-poly. Okay, rotate to one side. Let's rotate to the right so you're facing the back wall. Good. Open the chest toward the ceiling. Going to rotate toward the other side. Eyes should be out the front window now. Elbow down to your ribs, and then trace the ribs back into the middle. We're going to stay here. We're going to do the opposite direction. So go ahead, keep rounding your back. Make yourself into a roly-poly. Rotate to the left. Good. Open toward the ceiling.
rotate toward the right, elbow down to ribs, back to the middle. Cool. Feel pretty good? Spines feel all right? Okay, next one, shoulder blades. So for shoulder blades, we're just gonna hold our arms out like this. You can do this in any way. You can do it with your hands by your side, you can do them with your hands over your head. There's any number of ways that you can do this. Easiest way to coach it though, I think to start, is just arms out like this. And we're gonna imagine like our arms are on a shelf. We can't lift up off the shelf and we can't break through the shelf, okay? We're just gonna make as big a circle with our shoulder blades as we can. Up, forward, down, back. Up, forward, down, back. Okay, we're gonna do a couple more here. Really try to paint the edges. Go as wide as you can. Let's reverse it. So whatever you were doing, do the opposite. Cool. Anybody notice anything? Anybody feel like they struggle to find it in one way or the other? Feels weird, right? Yeah. Well, I'll tell you why this is important, like especially with the shoulder blades. Shoulder blades' job is to move on the rib cage so that your shoulder stays on the socket. If your shoulder blade doesn't move properly, then you're liable for shoulder injuries, right? So these are super, super important. Keep doing them. That your shoulders will feel better, I promise. Okay, after shoulder blades, next one's elbows. So for elbows, I want you to imagine, so everybody knows where their elbow pit is, right? Like it's just that crook of the elbow here, okay? The goal here is to keep the elbow pit face forward, okay? So if I tilt, if I turn my hand in like this and my elbow pit faces my stomach, that's movement from my shoulder, not from my elbow. So I'm gonna keep my finger on my elbow pit here. You see how I turn my hand in and out, but my elbow pit stays where it's at. That's the goal, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do both arms at the same time, just to save some time. Elbows to the ribs. Imagine you're trying to hold $100 bills in between your elbows and your ribs. Okay, we're gonna go palms up. Turn the hands over, all the way down. Turn the hands up. Good, all the way up. Yep, and down. One more time, up. And down. Now we're gonna leave our palms down. We're gonna reverse it, so we come up. Turn out, down. Palms, yep. Good job, cool. Elbows feel okay? No pain or anything? If anybody feels pain, please let me know. Like, I'll help you out, help you get around it. Okay, next one's wrists. As you're learning this, I would physically block the wrist with one hand, but after you learn it and you get the hang of it, you can do it, on its own, okay? So we're gonna take left hand, place it on the wrist, and we wanna have the wrist face up toward the ceiling. Imagine you got a glass of water here and you don't wanna spill it. So if you sense yourself starting to turn here at the elbow, we wanna avoid that. We wanna come back to this start position. With the palm open, we're gonna go in toward the pinky, down toward the ground, try to touch your fingernail to your elbow. You should feel burning sensation through here. Out toward the thumb, and then wrist lock yourself at the top, only moving from the wrist, not from your fingers. Cool, we're gonna go out toward the thumb, down, in, up. Cool. Other side, same thing. Ready, in toward the pinky, down, out, up, wrist lock at the top, out toward the thumb, in, and up. Cool. Everybody's wrists okay? I heard a little bit of pop crack. All you. Yeah. So in case anybody's wondering, click pop is not necessarily a bad thing. Typically that's just tissue fighting for space, unless there's pinch pain, in which case that's something to be concerned about. If there's no pinch pain, you're all right. Okay, cool. Next one we're gonna do is hips. So for this one, I would advise finding something you can hold on to, whether that's the wall or a pole, or if you're in the bullpen, it'd probably be just like the yellow dividers or whatever. But just make sure you have something to hold on to here so you don't fall over. You're not worried about, yeah, you can hold on to each other if you want. That's totally fine. If you got somebody in the bullpen that you want to buddy up with, that's totally fine. Okay, so I'm going to show you not holding on to anything, but you should put your hand on something. Cool? So go ahead. Gala, you can put your hand on there. I'm sorry. You can challenge yourself, but I welcome it. Go ahead. If you want to challenge yourself, that's fine. We're going to do the right leg first. Okay? So for the right leg, we're going to point the toes out toward the side. Sorry, Jordan. I know that was mean of me to tell you to hold on to something and then tell you to use the right leg. There you go. Okay, so we're going to point the toes to the outside. And we're going to cross the center, raise up as high as we can. Good. Start to open to the side. We're going to rotate the knee down, ankle up. You're going to be tempted to tilt. Don't tilt. Keep your hips nice and level. Okay, continue around until your knees are together. Good. We're going to kick straight back. Open to the side. You should feel cramp on the outside of the hip here. Drive the knee as high as you can. Foot comes across the center and down. That's good, man. I like that. Have you done these before? Never. Never. Okay, cool. Well, very good. All right, next, now we'll do the other side. So you do your left leg, I'll do my right. Okay, so we're all mirroring each other. Turn the toes out. Cross center. Raise up as high as you can. Hold here, wait for Laura. Okay, good. Open. Knee down, ankle up. Look for that cramp in the outside of the hip. Go toward the cramp. Keep coming around until your knees are together. Good. Kick straight back. Open to the side. Drive that knee as high as you can without tilting the hips. Foot comes across and down. Good job. That's tough. Yeah, that's why I like to hold on to something. Cool. Everybody feel that cramp in the outside of the hips? That's what we want. Jordan is so pumped. I love how pumped you are about this. That's what we want. So go toward that cramp. I'm okay with that. That's not closing angle pain. It might be confused with that sometimes, but it's not closing angle pain. That's the muscle, not the joint. The closing angle, if there's anything, it's going to be inside the hip. Okay? So as long as you don't feel any closing angle pain inside the hip, you're good to go. All right. Next one's knees. There's a couple different things we're going to do with the knees. The first is relax your knees. Can you move your kneecaps? Should be able to move your kneecaps up, down, sideways. If you cannot, it might help to sit down on the ground, relax completely, and then move them around. We're not going to spend too much time on it, but you can try. Kneecaps are the first one. Second one is the tibia, your shin. So a lot of people don't know that your knee actually rotates. Okay, like the knee is not just a hinge joint. There's a rotational component to it. So what I typically like to do, you could do this seated. Actually, let's everybody go ahead, sit down. It's probably easier to coach this way, but in the bullpen, you'll probably do this standing up. The first component of this is you cannot rotate your shin if your leg is straight. It won't work. It'll always come from the hip. So your knee has to be bent to do this, okay? So, yep, go ahead. Just bend one foot, and you can put the other foot underneath just so that we don't get confused here. And let's everybody have the left knee up like this. Yeah, there we go. Okay, cool. So we're gonna take our hand, place it underneath, make a nice grip. And then with the heel on the ground, we're just gonna pull the toes up toward the shin. And then we're gonna rotate out as far as we can. Like this. Perfect, yep. And then back in toward the middle. Good, and you can kind of feel, yeah, I can see you feeling the tibia and where it's going. It's actually up here. Feel it? It's moving, I can see it. It's okay. Okay, so this is very bare bones, basic, how you do it. In the video, I'll show you how to do it standing up, like you guys all get it. Go through the video, follow it, do it that way. Okay, but it's easier to coach this way to start. Okay, let's do the other side, same thing. So go ahead, tuck the other foot. Toes up toward the shin. Rotate out as far as you can, in as far as you can, out and in, out and in. Just a couple more times, out, this way. Yeah, there you go. And in, cool. Cool. Anybody feel any pain in the knee? No? Okay, cool. Let's stay on the ground. Actually, for this next one, we'll go back to the other side. So your left leg. Again, when you're in the bullpen, you'll do this standing up. But we're here already, so we might as well. Go ahead, lift your heel up off the ground, and then imagine you've got a Sharpie attached to your big toe. Draw the biggest circle you can draw. So we'll go to the inside. The biggest circle at like 1 mile an hour. That's my ankle, in case anybody's wondering. Doesn't hurt, just pop, click. As big a circle as you can. Good, and let's reverse it. opposite direction. Is that nice? Cool. Let's do the other side. Same thing. Heel up. Good. Sharpie on the big toe. Big circle to the outside. Or whichever way. Doesn't matter. Good. Let's reverse it. This is typically where people start to realize maybe one foot or one ankle has a lot more mobility than the other one. Laura's shaking her head, yes, right? So one thing that's important, and before we move on to the very last thing, which is toes, so I'm actually gonna have, while I'm saying this, go ahead, take your socks off. That's gonna be important. One thing that I think CARS is really, really important for is checking in, right? Especially as we age, it's really, really important to know where you are that day. This is something that I'm still learning, right, at 34, is where am I today? How do I feel right now? I know you're probably laughing at this because you're 20-something, but when you're my age, you'll say the same thing, okay? CARS is a great way to understand where you're at, right? I train almost exclusively in the mornings, and especially in the morning, I think it's really important to be like, how do I feel today? Because you're probably more at risk of injury when you're not warm or something like that. So if I wake up and I do my CARS and I'm like, shoulders kind of bother me. Doesn't mean I don't train. It just means maybe watch out for shoulder stuff, right? So that can be important, especially every day before training, but also before competition. You don't want to go to a competition not knowing that you're feeling like shit somewhere. Does that make sense? Okay. So for the last one, let's go ahead and stand up. And standing right where you are, can you pick up just your big toes? Oh. Yeah, you got it. Okay. Some people got it. Some people don't. It's not happening. Okay. Okay.
Oh, there it is.
Okay. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Nice. Okay. Let's go big toes down. Can you go 4 toes up? So leave the big toes out. 4 toes up. This one's a little bit easier for some people, not for others. Okay. Cool. Most people got that. All right. Cool. Let's go all toes down. All toes up, rather. Yep. And let's go big toes down only. And then big toes up. 4 toes down only. And all toes up. Okay. So we learned some things about ourselves tonight. Okay. That's okay. So it's kind of funny, it's kind of not, right? If I said move your arm up over your head and you were like, I'm trying, that'd be a problem, right? That would be a problem, okay? So it's not the end of the world. It's something that can be, worked on and proved. But here's why it's important, especially for jiu-jitsu athletes. I think the toes are probably the most overlooked joint when it comes to mobility for jiu-jitsu. I say this because your feet are how you communicate with the ground. All the information that the earth is giving you comes through your feet. If you're not able to send messages from here to there, you're certainly not getting messages from there to here, right? And when we play a sport that's barefoot, where we have to feel what's underneath our feet, we have to feel the ground, we have to feel our opponent, we have to feel things. If we're not getting all that information, the decisions that we make could be impaired. Does that make sense for everybody? Okay, so toes, super, super important. Next time you're training, look around at your teammates and look around at how many people can't do that. I think it'll surprise you. It's really, really surprising, and it's important because if you cannot put the ball of your foot and your knee on the ground, side control is not an option for you. You just can't hold it. There's no way. And I know Jake told you about our conversation when we were in here the other night, right? Okay, so do you think Jake will mind if I use him as an example? Okay. Jordan's boyfriend is a black belt. He's very talented and he smokes a lot of people. We're in here doing split squats, and I noticed something, and that was that he could not put the ball of his foot on the ground. And so we went down to the bottom of the split squat. He just couldn't hold it. And I asked him, I'm like, let's talk about this for a second. your toe mobility needs work, and this is why, and I explained to him why this is important, and he was like, that's so funny you say that, because I can't hold side control for shit. And it's like, it's my worst position. I get to side control, I have to go somewhere else because I just can't hold it, and now it makes sense, right? That's why, because if you can't put the ball of your foot and your knee on the ground, you can't push, right? You can't hold that position, and next time, I'm telling you, watch your partners. It's very, very common for them to be stuck here with just their toes, right? And if you notice that about somebody and they put you in side control, know that you'll be getting out soon. Okay. Anyways, do we all understand why toes are important? Toes are important. Okay, cool. So like I said, everybody will get the competition warm-up that we made, okay? Cars. If you practice it daily, honestly, it takes you 5 to 10 minutes. I say 15 minutes, but it's not that long. And then the dynamic warm-up, which comes next, right? We've just lubricated the joints, prepared them for higher levels of work. Now we need to actually elevate our heart rate. We need to elevate the temperature. We need to start getting blood moving. We want to start what's called potentiating, so basically doing a little bit of explosive stuff. In any case, go ahead, stand back up. I don't think you'll need too much space for this. Again, we made this so that you could do it in place. So, first things first, we're just gonna knee to chest. So you're gonna pull your knee up to your chest, and if you want extra credit, you can come up on the toes and the other foot. Good, and then come down. Take a couple steps, and then up on the other side. Good, get a good stretch in the hip. And we're gonna go through 10, 12, 15 times, whatever you feel. Again, get that good stretch, come up on the toes, take a couple steps. Okay, one more, and up. Cool. Next one, we're gonna go heel to butt. So you're gonna take your, yep. We're gonna try to drive the knee down toward the ground, make this as long as you can. You should feel stretch on the front of the thigh. Let it go, take a couple steps. Go to the other side, same thing. Good, if you want extra credit, you can come up on the toes and the other foot. Cool, so you get a little bit of ankle work in there. Good, and just keep repeating back and forth. The other thing that the dynamic warm-up is really good for is developing coordination, balance, a lot of other, I won't call them minor details, but a lot of other things that you can build through the dynamic warm-up that'll help you once you get on the mats. All right, we'll go one more, other side. Cool. Next one's a little bit of a skip. Okay, so from here, backtrack. Next one is a crawl. Typically, we would crawl across a length of like 10 yards. We don't have that, so I'm gonna show you, and then we'll do it together, okay? But what we're gonna do is just in place, with our hands and knees, or our hands and our feet on the ground, our knees an inch or so off the ground, we're gonna take a half step forward, and then a half step back. Forward, back, forward, back. You don't have to do it yet. Forward, back. We'll do that 10 times or so, and then we'll go to the other side, half step forward, half step back, half step forward, half step back. Okay, so just notice that it's opposite arm and leg. Okay, if my right arm moves forward, my left leg moves forward, and vice versa. Okay, so again, there's a coordination component here, a cross-body component here, a balance component, a core component. There's a lot of things going on. Okay, so let's go ahead. If you can, hands and feet. I like where your head's at. Okay, cool, cool, cool. All right, ready with your knees an inch off the ground. Let's go half step forward and back, forward and back, forward and back. One more forward and back, and then let's switch. Yep, opposite arm. Forward, back, good. Yep, we'll go 5 just like that. Yeah, yeah. It's I'll tell you the other, aside from all the other stuff, right? Raising the core temperature, increasing heart rate, balance, coordination, core strength is really good for your shoulders, right? Crawls are so underrated, right? They're so underrated. Really, really good for your shoulders, really good for your shoulder blade. Make sure your shoulder blade's moving properly on the rib cage, especially before you do something like jiu-jitsu. And it mimics a position that you will likely find yourself in, right? On your feet and your hands posted on something, right? So we're getting into more specific things, okay? Now everybody can stand up, and we're gonna start with just a skip, a basic skip, but to do it, we're just gonna march in place first. So go ahead, march up, and try to match my pace here. Cool, and then we're just gonna add a little bounce. Pop, 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 cool. You're ahead. Yeah. Okay. All right, good job. Okay, now from here, we're gonna get a little bit faster, and we're gonna go into just a high knee run. I'm gonna have Jess demo it. I'm dealing with a little knee thing. So Jess, go ahead, demo the.
Thinking of lifting our legs up to about 90 degrees. You can use your hand as a guide, as long as your knees go to about hip height, okay?
Cool. Good job. All right, next one, we're gonna go straight leg high kicks. So we're gonna go up slow, down fast. When you bring your foot back, I want you to try to bring it back in line with the other one. Okay, so the most common mistake here I see is people go like this, and they step out, and they leave a little bit of space. The goal is to extend the hip as far as you can. This inherently is not as far as you can. This is as far as you can, okay? So it goes up slow, snap down fast. Perfect. Yep. Other leg, up slow, down fast. Yep. You should feel stretch in the back of the leg here at the top, and then really bring it back quick. Pop. Yep. Cool. You can go ahead and switch feet. Just keep going, alternate. Up slow, down fast. Cool. Everybody feel that in the back of the thighs? Cool. If you don't, you can probably go a little bit higher. Okay. We're going to turn that into a skip. So it looks like this. Up, skip, up, skip, up, skip, up, skip. Just in place. Go ahead. Up, skip, up, skip, up, skip, up, skip, up, skip. Yep. Quick. Up, skip, up, skip, up, skip. Yeah, it's harder than it looks, right? Okay, so here again, rhythm, coordination. There's like a lot of other things going on here that translate to the thing that we're about to do. If you have the space, you can do some like back pedals or backward runs, things like that. You obviously won't have it in the bullpen always, but sometimes the venue would support that. If it does, I would recommend doing some backward stuff. Again, from a coordination standpoint, gets things going up here. And then lastly, this is nothing that we'll do right now, I do often recommend like some light grip fighting, something to get you in a specific warm-up kind of mood. Does that make sense? Everybody feeling a little warm? Okay, cool. Then it did its job, right? So like I said, in sum, cars, lubricate the joints, prepare them for higher levels of work, okay? Dynamic warm-up, elevate body temperature, elevate heart rate, balance, coordination, proprioception, just a fancy word for where am I in the world, right? There's a lot of things going on there, but you kind of notice how we go from very general to very specific, ending in that like grip fighting type warm-up. Does that make sense? Cool. Okay. The last thing that I will leave you on, and then I'll let Jess chime in if she wants to add anything to everything we just said. Competition is just data. Okay? I think we put way too much pressure on ourselves to win all the time. I know that sounds crazy. This guy's telling you that it's not that important to win. I'm just as competitive as anybody. I want to win. But it's okay if I don't. And I think it's important to remind ourselves that competition is just data. Use it as such. It doesn't define your self-worth if you don't win. Just take what you learned, whether you won or you lost, you'll learn something in any case. Take what you learned, go back to the gym, get better at that thing, go back and compete. Okay? I think it is, well, I just think we beat ourselves up a lot, right? And I say that as somebody who did it myself. And Jordan's nodding her head, and Laura's nodding her head, because I think you both have experienced it, and I know Jess has experienced it too, okay? It's okay. It's okay. Anyways, do you want to add anything to all that?
Okay. I want you to think of it like this. As somebody who does this full time, I'm very, very familiar with the sting of losing. I would go even a step further and say that your goal cannot be to win, because winning is something you cannot control, right? There are any number of things that are out of your control. You cannot control what your opponent is going to do. You can only control your reaction to the situation. You could get injured. There are 3 things that can go wrong in any given jiu-jitsu match. The first thing, what everybody's afraid of, is injury. The second thing, you make a mistake that your opponent asks you a question with their jiu-jitsu that you do not have the answer to. This is something that's completely outside of your control and something you can take back and improve on. But again, it's not something that you can control. If you don't have the answer, you don't have the answer. The third and final thing is what everybody's afraid of, right? Everybody's afraid of, they make a mistake to something that they feel they should have known better, or that they do know the answer to. Well, then that's something that you know now that you need to work on up here, right? It's not your knowledge, it's your propensity to make that mistake. So you need to go home and drill. But all of those things are completely out of your control, right? So there's no point in worrying about making a mistake or getting injured, because you're not going to let that happen if you can help it, right? So you cannot control whether or not you win. What you can control is putting on the best possible performance that you are capable of, and that should be your goal every single time, is to perform. But in any case, I will leave it at that.
There's a good Kobe Bryant clip that goes around from time to time that I absolutely fucking love, and I'll tell people about it until the day I die. The reporter asks him, is it the fear of losing or the love of winning that motivates you? And he says, neither. It's neither, right? If I'm focused on how bad I want to win or how afraid I am of losing, then I am inherently not thinking about the thing that's in front of me. And I think that's really powerful. Right? He's not thinking about the outcome, to what Jess was saying. Winning cannot be the goal. The performance has to be the goal. The thing right in front of you has to be the goal. And so I would encourage you to think about that as you go into these things, is the performance is the goal. Winning is a happy byproduct of that goal when you do it enough, right? So anyways, you may be wondering, what happens next? How do I do all this stuff? We put on a fight camp before a lot of these big tournaments. So like San Jose Open in January, the fight camp will start the 27th of November. It's an 8-week program. We also obviously train people year-round. Abraham is one of those people. Jordan's boyfriend is one of those people. But if you're interested in accelerating your game, getting ahead of your opponents, if you do intend to compete, we would encourage you to sign up for a strategy session. It's totally free. You talk with a coach, figure out what makes most sense for you. You can do that by scanning any of the QR codes around here, the one on the door, on the front desk. We got one on my computer here. Or if you want to talk to me afterwards, I can get you squared away.